and welcome to the third and final workshop of Dentsu Rise Up Challenge. So with the help of our Dentsu Global Sustainability, especially Anna Newsome, we have managed to get a very special guest to conduct this workshop on creativity that wins, that changes wins, right? So Ananya Rao is Dentsu's very own global superstar creative strategist, who has won more than 100 global awards across the big stages from Cannes Lion to every other top-notch award show. So she has two globally acclaimed campaigns, the Unfiltered History Tour. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this because it won really big at Cannes Lion. And also she has another global campaign, the Better Half Recipes. So Ananya will shed some more insight into these two campaigns. And what we've done is we've also taken some questions from the Rise Up Challenge participants, and we've shared these questions with Ananya, and she will be answering these questions as well. So she'll probably be talking about her creative process and how she sort of comes up with ideas, and especially relevance of creativity in sustainability, and how to sell creative work, right? As well as how to know if you have a great idea, right? So Ananya will also take some couple of questions from the audience. She's a very busy person, so let's not tax her too much on this, right? So here's Ananya. Without a further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ananya Rao from Dentsu Creative UK. Ananya, over to you.
Thank you for that lovely welcome. And thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to talk about creative work, let alone my work. So let me just quickly share the case study for you. So this is the Better Half recipes. We made this for a delivery service client back in India. So we have this brand called Swiggy. They're basically like they deliver food, but they were opening their very own segment of grocery deliveries. So this was our launch campaign for the same.
Kofta is not at all Indian. Stop using table salt in your cooking.
Chef 1, make sure you're wearing the left ear pod.
And Chef 2, wear the right one.
Hi, welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make the eggplant parmigiana. It is a delicious baked dish that is made from roasted eggplant. Okay, so this extra
This was made back in 2020, and this is the unfiltered history tour. So a little back context to this. This was an 18th month project in the making. It was a passion project that we as a team proactively pitched to the client. They loved it, and that's when we went ahead of it. A fun fact about this is that during the development of this campaign, nobody from our team, the Indian team, ever visited the British Museum. So the development, at every stage of the campaign was completely done virtually. If you haven't seen the campaign, this is some context.
The British Museum is a public institution dedicated to human history, art, and culture. Come discover over 80,000 works from around the world here in London. You are now viewing the Greagle Shield. Captain James Cook was a British event.
We're now looking at the Greagle Shield, which was taken from my people. Collections in the British museums are premised on a simple idea. I'm proud of what my grandfather stole from yours.
The Rosetta Stone was not the discovery neither of the French, neither of the British. It was already discovered and reused in Egypt multiple times.
For us, it's not just a well-carved rock, it is a living ancestor.
This very important statue is on display in a museum thousands of miles away.
Say the British Museum is the world's largest receiver of stolen goods. We're launching an interactive tour of some of its most contested artifacts.
There is always a story behind every object that was made in the kingdom, and that is how we told our history.
There were two foreign powers in rivalry over Egypt. One of them won over the other, and they took the war spoils of the other.
I feel I've received a balanced narrative.
For many Assyrians, this may be the last time we could really stand up to people who were trying to bully us.
We sort of went around the world and took what we wanted, and it makes me feel a deep level of shame.
Museums around Europe are slowly realizing that exhibiting items taken by force hundreds of years ago from other countries is kind of gross. And it's about time. We can't change the past, but we can change how we engage with it in the present.
So that was this year's Cannes Lions most awarded campaign. We won India's first ever Titanium Lion, which resulted in us winning Global Agency of the Year as well for Dentsu Creative Bangalore. I think it'll work better if we have questions that we can bounce off, because I can continue speaking about this campaign for however long. So within our Dentsu India's informal culture, we had this thing where we would just keep sharing links, sources of information, news articles, whatever it is, just to trigger some kind of thought or like discussion, or at least have some water cooler conversations. So one such time, we were forwarded a link of Vice's Empires of Dirt, which is basically a series of videos that explains how Europeans got rich at the expense of the rest of the world. So there was this one topic where they spoke about the British Museum and how it's like the world's, the British Museum. And we're just like, right. Our mind instantly went to Kohinoor, right? But at the same time, we're just like, but the British Museum has so many other cultures, so many other, it represents so many other countries that were colonized. And nobody's even talking about it. Like we live in a world that is literally post-colonization. Most countries, even right now, have a massive impact on what colonialization had on them, but we just live with it as if it's normal. So we realize that this is definitely a discourse worth talking about. So what we did was we just got on multiple calls, see what we could do. And, like, it was so odd for us to not be able to find accurate information about how our artifacts reached in the British Museum, because whether it be websites, whether it be articles online, they're all so polarized in the stories and narratives they sell out. The British Museum itself uses code words like acquired, gifted, and things like that, where in reality we're just like, no, that's not what happened to us. So the more we dug deep, the more we realized that most colonized countries were bound by this one thread, which was a lie that the British Museum is weaving together. And we're just like, it makes sense for us to demystify that, to just break it down in a way that's accessible to more common people. because when we were doing our research, it was so difficult to find information that we actually had to talk to people from from those regions and activists from regions across the world. But that's not very easy for a layman to just access. So that's why our entire positioning and packaging of the campaign is like, it's not just a campaign anymore. It's now an educative resource that's freely available for anyone on the internet. So that's why you have the filters and experience aspect to the campaign, where you can actually learn about the artifact in real time within 10-20 seconds. And you also have a long form podcast where people actually are talking about what these artifacts actually mean, because they're not just objects for Indians or like Egyptians or Greeks. It means so much more, and the British Museum's not treating it the way it should be treated.
At the beginning, you also said this started as a passion project, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, this conversation evolved, and then you actually went and looked for a client, is it?
So our India office already had a partnership with Vice. We worked on another
Right.
can-winning campaign called the 8-Bit Journal. So when Kashmir, the northern part of India, had an internet lockdown, one of our campaigns was to give them news in the forms of 8 bits. So we went old school and had SMSs designed and things like that. So that was our first campaign back in 2019. So we already had a relationship with the client, but so we went through them and we collaborated with Vice World News, which is based out of London.
Right.
So it's
Right.
so
Okay.
it's also winds back to having work that builds trust with your clients for them to trust such bold ideas.
Besides all the wins, so like what's been the response? Like especially because this is such a controversial topic, isn't it?
Yeah. We saw like a huge amount of positive reactions on social media. We got some responses from people like Shashi Tharoor, who's like a big deal in the Indian politics ecosystem. We got requests from other museums in London as well, asking if we could create campaigns for their museum as well, so that people could experience it in a very different way. Um, and yeah, our intention was to start a conversation about how colonialism exists today. I think we were pretty successful in doing so. I think the creative business, at least right now, is structured in such a way that it's just a playground of opportunities. You may have a lot of diverse interests, a lot of diverse passions, if I may say that. But this industry is that one industry that unifies all of this into one output. So the more diversity within your team, the more perspectives you have, which makes it a better um, product, like your creative product. So I think this is that one avenue where true diversity and inclusion, and especially if you want to do good in a way where you're just literally thinking out of the box the entire time, every single day, this is the perfect avenue to be. I was lucky enough to stumble upon this very early in my career, so I think I'm going to be here for a while as well. And looking at the number of people interested in the creative businesses, I think we're in for a very good future within this industry. I think I think the creative process is a myth. Every time you sit to ideate or every time you sit to brainstorm is just, it's always chaotic. It never gets easier. But what does help is asking questions, not just the right questions, but also the wrong questions. It definitely puts a lot of perspective and angles into your thinking, and it also eliminates a lot of options and possibilities that you wouldn't have even considered. So I think our business is such that questions in general, being curious, is always a strength. And that's something that always pushes not just yourself, but also your team forward in producing the best possible work for your client. And if you're speaking about creative processes, I think every idea that has existed or will exist is always going to be a remix of something or the other. So taking inspiration, knowing what's already been done, knowing the possibilities when it comes to technologies, when it comes to sustainability, where we're at in terms of development as a whole, and seeing how you can apply that to your clients and see what kind of impact you can make to a certain set of audiences. I think that's an ever evolving process. So finding your comfort zone and being comfortable with being uncomfortable is your creative process. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
the more you talk to people, the more you realize that everybody's just looking for that one sweet spot. For me, it's always the more information I have, the more comfortable I am with ideating and coming up with ideas. But for some people, when with little information, they don't feel too restrained. So it's about just seeing where you're comfortable at and how you want to build your horizons around your creative process. Oh, and these are things I
That's a
wish I
huge
told
one.
my younger self. Yeah, this is literally what I wish I told my younger self, and that is, if you're a part of a meeting, if you're within a room, know that you're in the room for a reason, and your perspective and your opinion wants to be heard. So most times as a young creative, you keep rejecting yourself and you keep rejecting your own ideas. But that's the beauty of it. You come in with so much new perspective, so much more ideas, which may or may not be good. But again, there's nothing as a bad idea. It's always development of it. So just be as vocal as possible, ask as many questions as possible. Don't reject yourself. Don't add that to your job list, but just be comfortable with being ambiguous. I wouldn't say there's a secret sauce, but I think it's just finding the right collaborators. What we realized with both these campaigns was we always assume that the agency is the one that's always very keen to put out brave, bold ideas. But if you look at the other side, which is their client side, they're equally keen to make groundbreaking work. So it's just about being as candid as possible with your ambition and also giving them the confidence with your team and your idea. Vice was a proactive project, so we had to sell. We didn't have a brief for it, so we had to sell it end to end. But what worked was the fact that we built the project together. It's about finding that middle ground of what matters to both entities, the agency and the client, and moving forward from there. It's being so passionate about the project that you eventually start breathing it and the client knows it. So there's no scope of doubts, or even if it does exist, it's always finding an answer together. So you don't have everything on your own shoulders. It's about teamwork, literally. I think for young people, it's always to not shy away from putting it forward, even if you know it's going to be shut down. But I think as you grow in the industry, you realize or you find nuances through which you find these small holes through which you seep in through. So start laying your foundations about your idea early. Start understanding what kind of work makes sense for XYZ client, and it's all about packaging at the end of the day. So you might have a core idea, but package it in a way that it makes sense for your client's business needs. So they see it as a win for themselves, but parallelly it's a win for you as well. For Swiggy, the campaign I just showed you, it was a leap because the brief was it was just an awareness campaign that, we have this new entity that sells groceries now. But what we did was we took it like way up the notch. But what we did was we found this one insight about our target audience, which would have primarily, again, been women, saying that why should women be subjected to to the kind of patriarchy that has existed throughout the years for thousands of years. And that's when we realized that cookbooks themselves was written for one person. So it's about justifying your idea with logic, like pure logic, and facts and evidences that support it, but also packaging your entire creative idea where your where the brief is met at the same time. Does that make sense? So this was a campaign that was developed during the pandemic. I'm not supposed to use that word, but it's true. Um,
Okay.
we noticed this kind of difference between the way our female friends, family, colleagues used to behave where and compared to the men, because you'd always see like women running back into the kitchen, cooking something up, spending a lot of time there, and then coming back to work. And we realized, like, why is this different? Like all of us are supposed to be experiencing the same thing. And then we realized that, the whole notion about us being modern, feminist, and all of that is just in theory, whereas the very fundamentals of sharing work, or like sharing chores, is still not in practice in India. So we were just like, who sets the rules? Like, we went way back, and then we realized that for cooking, cookbooks are the rules, right? So we went back to the rule book, and that's when we realized we had to bring about a change. I would say no, but also the fact that most campaigns these days, or most briefs these days, are headed towards social impact and sustainability in some way or the other. So if you master the art of cracking ideas or concepts for sustainability, I think you can definitely do commercial briefs as well, because this is the key focus in most regions right now. So just find inspiration, just keep reading up, be forever curious, and just, yeah, it's literally the same. You can't differentiate between briefs. I think there are two criterias. One, if you actually see how your idea can impact the lives of so many people in a positive way, which is one. The second one, if it's actually starting a conversation about something a majority, or not even a majority, like people aren't aware of. So colonialism, for example, we read it in history textbooks, but we don't realize that it's still happening today in like indirect ways. So that was one aspect where we realized that, that's a good idea. But when you look at impact, you have a lot of innovation campaigns, and how um, innovation campaigns where it actually brings about constitutional change. So take, for example, the Palau Pledge, take, for example, Contract for Change. These are these really change the life of farmers and citizens and whatnot. So it's about not just about numbers, but it's also about the quality of life that's elevated for people during the process. Oh, I'm an obsessive reader, so I just, yeah, so I think reading for me helps, but I think for most people you have different mediums. It's like conversations with people, um, like cultural tours, whatnot. It's just about, again, finding your thing. I'm an obsessive reader, so it helps me keep, like, I keep my brain as this 1 TB database that just keeps refreshing every now and then. So that's helpful. Um, but yeah, it's just about finding your comfort zone and how you absorb information best. I have colleagues who prefer podcasts over reading, who prefer one-line headlines over long-form articles or even YouTube videos. It's just about keeping yourself aware and not being ignorant about what's happening in another part of the world. Oh, that that's a good one. So I've been here for 3 weeks now, and I think it's just the way I describe it is like, at least back home, your nose was in everyone's business. Like you would smile at people, you would talk to them, casual conversation was a thing. But I think here everybody is just with themselves. I think that's really good as well, because you just get so content with um, who you are. But at the same time, I think it's a cultural shock. Like I'm a big chatterbox, and it's just, and that again was a form of understanding what's happening in the world. So I think here I get my head into like reading a lot more. So that's good too. So I think it balances out. It has its perks.
Okay, this question is about the competition, because Ananya, you know that we are doing this Dentsu Rise
Yeah.
Up challenge, which is to combat food waste in Sri Lanka. So one of the questions we've got is, how do you like win a competition? I mean, this is a very broad question.
I think one thing you should keep in mind is always diversify your medium of communication. But before that, always find this core idea that can translate well into most things. So you don't just stick, like, when you have a core idea, be open to interpretation on different mediums. So if yours is a primarily long form TVC, see how you can adapt that to maybe social, or how you can have like a digital extension, or or even offline for that matter. So it's about, since this is about an awareness campaign, how do you reach people the most? Like what mediums, and how do you translate that to other mediums as well?
Okay, another question we've got is, in your opinion, what is the future direction of advertising?
Yeah, yeah, this is
Good.
like an existentialism part of this talk.
Advertising, yes.
Yeah, but at the same but at the same time, I'd like to say that I'm very optimistic about it. As I said, you see more younger people with a lot of different backgrounds and interests entering this field, and you see a lot of clients and brands again having a lot of sustainability and social impact related briefs. So we're all headed towards a very self-aware world when it comes to advertising. So you'll be doing a lot of meaningful work and not just commercial work. So I think we're in a really good direction. I would say I started off by literally writing down every small thought I had. I had a lot of shower thoughts, so every time I used to have a bath, I used to like just write stuff. Just keep documenting all your silly thoughts as well, because you never know how you can use those to develop another idea. Because never disregard anything you have. I used to make it a point to I write at least 5 big campaign ideas per day, and that just got my brain to work, if I'm being honest. That just kept me on the go. It made me intuitive and receptive to anything I saw, read, was around. So it just
Right.
helps with the way you see the world around you. Don't make work your entire life, but at the same time use your life to see how it can impact your work. I really like IKEA's disabled. It's basically where they created products to um, help the handicapped use their products better. I think that was brilliant. I think that was an amazing aspect um, of inclusion. I think even the 2030 carbon footprint campaign, which was 2021, I think that was brilliant because a lot of people didn't know the kind of impact their small actions on leading to a um, larger scheme of things. And also last year's Peanutex campaign, where they used pineapple waste to create and collaborated with Gucci, Prada, and all of those. I think when you can sell your idea to these large chain stores, I think it's more than just a domino effect. You're literally setting a precedent for every other upcoming um, startup or company to come. So it's just, I think those.
Okay, just got another
Ananya, I have a
question.
question. Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
clearly you're very passionate about advertising and ideas, and I wondered where that passion came from. Like, at what point in your life was that sparked? Was it something that you experienced as a child, or did you watch an advert that kind of really inspired you? What was it that kind of sparked that initial interest in this career?
If I'm being very honest, it's definitely the people I worked with. I was lucky enough to be surrounded by creative people who are equally or more passionate than I am today. It's just about, so the way I view this industry is like, as a child, you had these ideas or like fantasies about doing things, but reality struck you, and you're just like, oh, that's never possible. But I feel like as an adult, this is that industry where you make those uh, fantasies a reality. I think this is the only industry that allows you to do that. So it's just being forever young that gets me going.
That's a great answer. I like that.
I subscribe to an endless amount of newsletters, which I should catch up on reading, but but I used to live on Substack for a point of time. It's just, it might not even be like a developed piece of technology, but just knowing it exists is important for us in this industry. So Substack, I have some podcasts that I listen to, which I absolutely love. It's called Offline and Reply All. It is just like just the conversations that happen gives you a new angle of thinking. You have a lot of strategy related newsletters called as Wait But Why. Again, I have to catch up, but these are some of my go-to resources when it's to like catch up on things. And Twitter, like being on tech Twitter is enough to overwhelm you about the tech world. Jot down your initial thoughts. Being a creative person, you usually have at least 2, 3 ideas, thought starters lingering in your head. Write it down, then break down the brief. Find nuances. I mean, this is just what I would do, so please don't take it literally. Then find nuances that make sense to you and things that you'd actually want to highlight with your ideas, and then get to brainstorming. So have your initial thought starters, collect all your information, and then get back to the ideation process is what I would do.
Right.
If the I hope this was enough because
I mean, that was it's a huge question, like I can't even think how to answer that. So I think, yeah, that advice makes sense. Guys, any other questions? We can conclude this session. So thank you so much for taking the time off your busy schedule to share your valuable ideas and insights. And I thoroughly enjoyed your talk, and I'm sure others did too. And I know for a fact there are a lot of creative students were on this call. So thank you once again. And also huge thank you to Anna Newsom for our global sustainability team, who has been supporting us right throughout our Dentsu Rise Up challenge and has been like really helpful throughout. So thank you, Anna. And also a thank you to all of you who took time despite the torrential rains, despite the cricket match that is going on, to join us, right? And also a shout out to Kohli for all your hard work behind the scenes. So thank you, Kohli. Thank you everyone for taking time. Then stay tuned in. Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you so much, Ananya.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.